Hello again everybody, welcome to the channel. Now this is a follow-up video on the other one that I recently released regarding the MIDI PAD 2 app. I asked in the video if people want more detail on how I've set this up with the RC-600, and quite a few of you have come back and said you would like to know the ins and outs of things. So this is a video explaining that. Now, you can see here I've got the MIDI PAD 2 open on my iPad. There are a couple of things to go over first before we delve into exactly which MIDI commands we are using in the MIDI PAD 2 app, and also which assigns we're using in the RC-600. So these are two ways you can connect your iPad to your RC-600. First off, you can use one of these Lightning to USB camera adapters. I picked this up on Amazon fairly cheap, and it works pretty well. The second way is to get one of these wireless MIDI adapters. Again, I've recently purchased this from Amazon. It was about £16 here in the UK, and it does the job without having to worry about any wires and cables connecting from the iPad to the RC-600. If you are planning to use one of these adapters, you can just skip this next step. However, if you're going to use one of these wireless MIDI adapters, we are going to need to set up an extra app on the iPad. So here we are at the back of the RC-600. You can see I've got my wireless MIDI adapter. The out is going into out, and the in is going into in. If you are using this with a USB camera adapter, like I mentioned before, you're obviously just going to go into the USB input at the back of the RC-600. But for this demonstration, I've just plugged this into the back of the unit. This one that I've got has got a little switch underneath the bottom of this side. So I just flick this down, and you'll see a blue light flashing. Now, if my iPad is not connected, that will continue to flash. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect using my iPad, and that blue light will be solid. So the app that I'm referring to is called MIDI Mitter, and it looks like this. When we open it up, you can see that we're faced with a screen that looks like this one. If I just click on the Devices tab at the bottom, it will give me a list of devices that I've got available. And the one that I've just plugged back into the RC-600 is this one here, MIDI port A. And at the moment, you can see it's not connected. So all I do is I tap this, it says connecting, connected. And now I know my iPad is connected to the RC-600 wirelessly. So we're back on the ground again. You can see I've got my wireless MIDI adapter flashing there, so that means it's not connected, and I've got my MIDI Mitter app open here. When I tap this tab, it says connecting and connected, and that blue light is now solid, so I know that we're connected and good to go. Okay, if you have seen my previous video, you'll know that I used 6 assigns, which are for these 6 pads here, and we'll talk about those afterwards. And then for these 2, I used note messages, and then for these 2, I used program changes. So let's go ahead and have a look at each of these first of all before we go to the RC-600. So if we tap the edit button in the top right hand corner, you will then open up the preferences page, which is where you can see your page dimensions, which is the rows and the columns. And you can see that I've got 10 pads set up here with 2 rows and 5 columns. You can also name the page if you want, and there's a couple of other options down below. Now, if I go across to pad editor, this is where I can make some adjustments. So I can give my pad a name, change the color, decide whether I want it to be a pad or to toggle. And below that, I've got control change. And if I just press this little arrow across, I can go this way as well. But if I just press this little arrow, I can go through the 3 different options. So we've got program change, we've got note messages we can send, and we've got control change messages. So for this first pad, you can see that I've got an all start stop. So what I've done in the RC-600, we're on channel number 7. So that means that my channel here has to be number 7. So you'll see that the RC-600 is on channel 7, and then this is also on channel 7. So below that is the actual control number, or the CC number that I'll be sending it on, which is number 11. Now you'll see that when we go to the RC-600 a little bit later on, this number does not actually match up with the CC number in the RC-600, so I'll talk you through that and why it's slightly different. But for now, we'll just set up exactly what we need using MIDI PAD 2 before we go over to the RC-600. So again, we're on channel number 7, and my control number is number 11. I'm just going to leave the up and down value from 1 to 128. We don't really need to make any adjustments there. So just to run through this, the name of this pad is all start stop. You can see that I've changed the color to red. I've left it as a pad, and my channel is number 7 and my control is number 11. Now, if I just tap on the rhythm start stop pad, you'll see that everything is now changed. So I don't need to come out of that. It automatically saves everything, so I don't need to save anything here. So again, I'm just going to go across, tap this, and you'll see that it's changed to number 12 because I've set up CC message number 12 on here. But everything else is virtually the same. Apart from the name, the color, I've left it as a pad. It's still a control change, it's on channel 7, and it's number 12 that I want to be sending the CC message over. I'll now come down here to my input effects, and you'll see that, again, it's changed the name, I've changed the color. I've actually switched this one to toggle because I want this to light up when it's on and go off when it's off. So that's why I've changed that one to toggle. It's still a CC message. It's on channel 7 and this one is number 13. Next to that, exactly the same as this one. However, this one is now CC 14. Now we'll go up here to mic mute. And again, name's different, color's different. This one's also on toggle so that I can see when my mic is muted and when it's unmuted. Again, we're on channel 7. It's control 15 in this case. And then down here, I've got my rhythm variation. Again, the name's different, the color's different. This one is back to a pad. It's on channel 7 and it's control number 16. So all 6 of these pads are going to be set up using the assigns in the RC-600 because they are CC messages and we need our assigns to send and receive that information. Over here though, we've got kick and snare sounds, and you'll see that when I tap the kick, we've now got a different way of sending information. So I've got my name as the kick, different color, and it's a pad. Let's go down here a little bit. You'll see that I've got it to a note message. I'm not interested in sending any CC messages or program changes using these 2 pads here. So it's just a note message we're sending, and you'll see this time we're on channel number 10. And the reason for that is because the RC-600 is on channel 10 by default when you're planning on controlling any of the rhythm sounds from an external device. Now you can see the note underneath this. We don't have a control change here. It's channel 10, and because it's a note message, I now decide which note I want to be triggered using that pad, which is the kick pad. So I know that C2 is the kick sound that I want to trigger. And if I just come down to snare and tap that one, you can see everything else was the same. I've changed the color, I've changed the name, but it's now D2 rather than C2, and that means I've got 2 different sounds here that you can see there. If I just tap between them, there's 2 different note messages that I'll be sending on these 2 pads. And then finally, these 2 pads are not note messages, they're not control changes, they are program changes. And you can see now I'm back on channel number 7. However, it's now program change that's selected. I've got the name of the song that I want to select using that pad. I've changed to a color that I'm happy with. I've left it as a pad, and now I've got a program change on channel 7, and it's set to program 52 because that song is memory number 52 in the RC-600. And then if I tap on starting over just below, everything else is the same except for the name. And my program change is set to 60 because starting over is memory number 60. So now let's go back over to the RC-600 and make sure everything is set correctly so that all of this information works. And also we need to go over a few more things within the RC-600 so that everything is sent correctly. So now we've set everything up using the MIDI Pad 2 app. We're going to go over to the RC-600 and make sure that everything is set correctly. So if I press menu 2 times, I can now access my MIDI settings. You can see that my control messages are sent on channel number 7. So that's what we talked about before when we were setting everything up using the iPad using channel number 7. You can select whichever channel you wish as long as it doesn't interfere with any other channels you might be using. And just make sure that you factor this in when you're setting up your information from MIDI Pad 2. I left my rhythm channel to number 10. So that's what we talked about when we sent our note messages. So now everything is set up correctly in MIDI Pad 2. We're connected wirelessly to the MIDI adapter using our MIDI emitter app. If you are going into the back of the RC-600 via USB, you don't need to worry about that. So now we've just got to make sure we set up our assigns correctly so that these first 6 pads will work. As mentioned, my all start stop, if I press edit, my all start stop is channel 7 and it's control change 11. So if I go to the RC-600, I'm going to press menu twice to go into my assigns and make sure I find the right assign. I've actually used 5 other assigns to control a few other things in this song. So I'm starting from assign number 6, and it'll be entirely up to you which number assign you want to use. But I know my all start stop I need to set up using assign number 6. So I go into number 6. I can go across here, make sure that my assign is switched to on that way, or what I like to do is turn my assign on first before I go into it, because there's been that many times where I've forgotten to turn it on. You'll see that I've got MIDI CC10 selected here, and if I go back to the iPad, we're going to have a look at this first pad, which is the all start stop, and I go into pad editor here. You'll see that I'm actually set on control number 11. The reason for this is because MIDI information can either be sent from 0 to 127 or from 1 to 128. So if we look on MIDI Pad 2, the control number is always going to be 1 number higher than the CC number on the RC-600. That's what we have to factor in when we set up any of these assigns. So again, on the iPad, we're on channel 7, control number 11. And then on the RC-600, it's going to be MIDI CC10. If I just page across, that's going to be my target, which is all start stop. and that's the pad that I want to use to control. If I exit out of this and I've got my assign switch to on and I just press done on the app, let's just check that this is going to work. So you can see that I've got some tracks ready to play. My all start stop should work when I hit it now. And there we go. You can see that spinning around nicely. And then if I press it again, it should stop. So let's now take a look at assign number 7 for me, which is going to be my rhythm start stop. You can see I'm CC11, and if I just go across here now on the iPad, I want that to be CC12 like we talked about earlier. So again, we're always one higher, and on the RC-600 it's CC11. I page across, and my target for this one is the rhythm start stop. So we'll check all of these out and make sure they all work in a few minutes. So let's just keep going through them. So I'm now going to come down to my input effect. You can see my CC is number 13. So I'll exit, have a look in my next assign, which is going to be CC number 12 in this case. I page across. I've got input effect A selected for that one. I'm going to exit out of that. You'll see that my next assign is going to be number 9, which is going to be MIDI CC 13. I'll page across again, and that's going to be input effect B. And if I come down here, we want this one to be 14, because again, it's one higher than 13. Exit out of this one again. I'm in assign number 10 this time. This is going to be my mic mute, which is over here. So if I just tap this, it's control 15. So we want MIDI CC 14 here. Again, I page across. It's going to be my mic 1 in mute. Exit out of this. This is the last assign now. So it's going to be assign number 11, CC 15 here, which is my rhythm variation. And you can see that it's control number 16 on the MIDI pad 2. Page across, and that's my rhythm variation. I've left my minimum as A, maximum as D, so that will go from variation A to variation D, but you can then change this to whichever variations you want to go from. So in this case, this would go from variation B to variation C. So now we've got all our assigns set up and they're all turned on, and we've set everything up in MIDI pad 2. We're going to hit done, and let's just make sure everything is working nicely. So I'll come out of that so you can see the screen. So let's first of all try our all start stop. There we go, that one is fine. Rhythm start stop for this one. And that one is also fine. The mic 1 mute, I'm just going to go to enter here on the screen so you can see mic 1 is not muted yet. And then when I hit the pad, there you go, you can see mic 1 being muted and unmuted when I tap the pad. I'm going to go into my input effects here. So this would be A and this would be B. Let's check that they work. Input effect A, on and off. Input effect B, on and off. And then if I just press my rhythm start stop one more time and hit my variation button, you can now hear the variation happening between those two rhythms. And then also just to check our note messages here as well. There's the kick and there's the snare. And then finally, I'm obviously on with or without you, but if I just press starting over, that should change to memory number 60. Let's try it out. There we go. And I can go back to memory 52 when I tap with or without you now. And that's it. And I can chop and change between my tracks that way. And one final thing, you don't need to just have 10 pads selected. If you go to your preferences here, you can obviously add as many pads as you want in whatever layout you want. So you've obviously got your rows and columns, and there's lots of different things you can do. Program changes, note messages, and also CC messages. But just remember everyone that when you do set up your CC messages, you will need to be using your assigns in the RC-600 in this case. Right, that's it for today everybody. I hope that's been useful, and it's a little follow-on video from the first one that I talked about when I was setting everything up with MIDI pad 2. If you haven't already checked out that video, or indeed any other videos regarding MIDI, you can go ahead and check that out by clicking the playlist on screen. And as always everybody, I will see you in the next one. Ta-ta!